All right, here we go again, back at it for another episode of A Hunter's Legacy, the only hunting podcast that ditches the pros for the average Joes. This week, we got a young man from North Carolina. Samir, what's going on, man?
I do, Mitchell. Thanks for having me on.
You're you're welcome. You sound pretty excited to join the podcast.
Hunting's my passion, so I just love talking about it, and I enjoy doing podcasts whenever I get a chance.
That's awesome. There isn't many hunting podcasts that I won't say open invitation, but it's pretty close to open invitation.
Yeah, no, and it's great that I've listened to a few of yours, and I'm excited to kind of just talk about my history and story, and learn more about you and yours.
But you won't hear more. It's all about you, man. So fill the listeners in. So you're from North Carolina. What else do we need to know about you?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Washington D.C. and grew up in Maryland and Virginia, and so I learned hunting from my father, who learned from his father. Uh, we used to drive, anywhere within 2.5 hours, just public hunting spots or knocking on doors, knocking on farms like the old days. And, I really learned my passion for him. It was one activity that we shared. And, if you ask him, he says that he used to take me as soon as I could walk. But I did find photographic evidence when I was 7 years old. So I think that's at least the earliest that I know of. And I took my hunter safety course when I was 9 years old, which is same year I got my first deer. And yeah, it's just been a passion of mine. Other than obviously my wife. And I think as I've gotten older and had the means to travel more to hunt, it just means more and more to me every year of my life. And back then, the Maryland Eastern Shore was known for its great waterfowl hunting, but my first love was dove hunting. That's when that's something that I still remember the day I got my first dove, and after a very frustrating. I don't know how many times I tried, but when I dropped that first dove, I was hooked.
Before we wrap into that, so what do you do for work? You said you travel a little bit.
Yeah, I've worked in the National Football League off and on for almost 30 years now with the league office and various teams: Jacksonville Jaguars, St. Louis Rams, Pittsburgh Steelers, and most recently the Carolina Panthers. Now I'm just a part-time consultant for a couple of different companies.
What were you doing in the I'm a big football fan. Fortunately, I'm a Vikings fan. What were you doing?
I worked in the front office, mostly negotiating contracts and doing scouting and managing salary cap. I was vice president of football administration. So, I like to say I dealt with all the Jerry Maguire wannabes of the world while I spent the owner's money.
We better move on. I could talk. I'm excited for the draft coming up.
I do have a Minnesota story for you. So, unfortunately, when I became a worker, I started working a week after I graduated college, and unfortunately, my job prevented me from hunting for probably the first 4 years of my career or so. But anyway, once I got the hang of things, I started because I traveled to all the away games with my teams. I started arranging hunts around the cities we were traveling to. So my Minnesota story is one year at the end of the season during pheasant season, I was able to arrange a pheasant hunt with an old friend of mine. And it ended up, I ended up going up early a couple days before the team, and we had a great hunt. And then the next day, we had the game, and I think we won that game. But yeah, so that's my Minnesota hunting story.
From a non-football executive, am I wrong for thinking that some of these people overthink this thing? Because, like, I don't know. For example, I feel like the people watching at home sometimes know like some of these decisions that these teams are making are terrible before they even start.
Yeah, it definitely is overkill and gets overanalyzed, not just from fans and media. Uh, Personnel that are, second guessing clubs or whatever, but even internally at the club level, I mean, by the time the drafts roll around, you're just so tired of discussing the same player, watching the same film. You just want to get on, start and be done with it and move on.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say about this, I think the the talent is easy to scout. I think a lot of the people that players that fail that have a lot of talent is mindset. Either they They think they're talented, more talented than anybody else, and don't have the work ethic and just poor attitude, I think is a lot of reason for bust.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a high level of bust, especially around among, first round picks, and, I used to keep a running list, and it just kind of outgrew it, but, yeah, you can go through every single player that busted that was a first round pick, and you could pick why. Was it, in the rare career-ending injury? Was it, off-field issues? Was it, just didn't have the level of that talent that he rose to. He was just a good college player, not an NFL player. But yeah, no, I agree with you there.
If all first round players had the same mentality and work ethic as Tom Brady, they'd probably be successful.
Yeah, and he's a rare one. That's why.
Yep. So you got started pretty early. You said you were following your dad around as soon as you could walk, allegedly, and then around 7 is when you first started going?
Yeah, that's the first. That's the oldest picture I could find when I was 7, and then took my hunter safety course when I was 9. Got my first deer then, and then I think my hunting career really took off when I was 11. My parents got tired of the city rat race, and they bought 105 acres in Virginia. It was just great for hunting. I mean, it had everything. And so then, I was able to go hunting before and after school and really take all the things my dad had taught me, teach myself some things, trial by error, things like that. And so, yeah, that was a lot of fun just having your own property to hunt on. And hopefully at some point before I die, I can say that again.
So you were following him around a lot. How old do you think you were when you first started getting the gun in hand, and instead of him going and you following, you were kind of leading the charge and he was kind of teaching you the ropes?
I mean, it started out, I still remember the day I came home from kindergarten and he bought me my first pellet gun. So I used to, take my pellet gun with him. Um, and then I'm trying to remember, like I said, at least I was at least 9 years old when I was shooting a shotgun. Might have been a little earlier than that. Um, but then, by the time I was 11, I was hunting on my own without him.
When you're 11 already, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, because he had to get up and go to work, and so when he couldn't go with me, I'd go myself, before and after school.
You said dove hunting was your first passion.
Yeah. It's still my favorite.
Is that what you were going out for at 11?
No, I mean, well, when I was 11, so our property, we had deer, bear, turkey, quail, doves, foxes, rabbits, squirrels. I mean, I would do a lot of squirrel hunting back then. A lot of small game hunting. I really enjoyed small game hunting on my own. Did some deer hunting on my own, and then I would usually have to wait, either call the neighbor or wait for my dad to get home to help me drag it.
Yeah, that's fun getting out. What were you using on some of these small game pellet gun?
No, I don't remember the brand, but I had an old, 20 gauge pump shotgun.
Really?
That was my first, got my first deer with that, and, yeah, just used that on everything.
I was talking to a buddy today, and he was telling me about his daughter going out turkey hunting with him. She's 8, and I never really looked into it that much. Some of these 410s, well, I shouldn't say some of them. A 410 can knock down a turkey at 40 yards with the right shot. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people use that now just, I guess, to challenge themselves, and, I did buy a 410 several years ago for my dad after he had, shoulder surgery. I haven't used it yet, but I'm definitely saving it to that'll be my future son's first shotgun for sure.
Do you remember what your first gun was?
The 20 gauge pump. I don't remember the brand offhand.
Okay. So, yeah, you got me thinking all this NFL stuff, and I'm a little sidetracked. So, you're going out 11 on your own. What was the first animal that you harvested out on your own?
I If I had to guess, I don't remember exactly, but if I had to guess, I'd probably say a squirrel.
Squirrel. What
Yeah.
about what's the first one you know for sure? Like big game.
Big game, I do remember getting like a I do remember getting a doe on my own, when my dad was at work, and I had to call the neighbor to help me drag it off the mountain.
The mountain. Any idea
Yeah.
how old you were?
I was probably I was either 11 or 12.
Really? Walk me through that, going out on your own and fill us in on the story if you remember it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just kinda one of those things that, just taking everything my father taught me about, gun safety and, he always taught me, we're gonna eat everything we harvest, so if you don't wanna, do the field dressing or, eat it, don't pull the trigger, and I mean, to this day, I still do that and even take it a step further. Um, but no, I just remember, I think it was after school, and, I went to a stand, behind our house, kind of up on a mountain we had, probably very close to last light, a doe came down, and, I was using my first, hunting rifle was a 243, which I still have now. I That's actually my coyote gun now. But yeah, no, I just remember getting him and then having to immediately walk down the mountain to the house, call my neighbor to come bring his truck and help me, drag it to have, for when my dad got home.
That's the part I wanna hear. What was it like telling your dad? A lot of people shoot their first deer, especially at that age, with their dad, not always. Their mom could be there too, but I bet that had to have been a pretty exciting feeling.
Yeah. I mean, he was with me when I got my very first deer, but for this one, when he wasn't there, this is obviously way before cell phones, and so I had no way of telling him. So it was kind of like I couldn't wait till he got home, and then he pulls up, and then the deer's sitting there in our driveway, and so he was pretty happy.
Like an accomplishment that you
Yeah.
didn't think you were gonna do that. Were It's probably hard to think about. Were you pretty confident at that age? I'm trying to think back when I was younger. Looking back now, I didn't know near as much as I should have.
Yeah, I think back now and I was very fortunate at a young age, like I remember, like I said, when I got my hunter safety course at 9 years old, I remember the first day of deer season, I got my first deer, which not a lot of hunters can say that. And then I remember when I was 11 years old and in the first year we had bought that property, I got the largest buck to date. I got an 11 pointer and I haven't come close to matching that since. Or I'm sorry, when I was 11, I got my first bear. When I was, 12, I got, the 11 pointer, and so these are things, like, what I'm trying to say is I guess I almost peaked too soon, whereas, here I am at this young age and still haven't beat my own personal buck record, and it took me a couple decades before I got, my next couple bears, after that first one.
Were you on your own when you shot that bear and buck?
I was not, I was with my dad.
Both times?
Yeah.
So it took you quite a while to get a black bear again, huh?
Yeah, that's the one bonus or one of the bonuses of living in North Carolina is, they have the biggest black bears in the world on the East Coast in Hyde County, and so a few years ago, I was fortunate to get a little. He was a little over 300 pounds and came very close to Boone and Crockett. I think I just missed it by I forgot how much it was, but yeah, and then I got one, a second one or a third one 2 years ago too.
Hearing that story reminded me of another guy I interviewed, Boaz, out of I think he's in Idaho now, but he missed like 3 bears when he was young, 10, 12, 13, and like 15 years later, he still hasn't shot a bear yet.
No, I mean, it's definitely something I took for granted, and, I'll tell you real quick about that bear story, it's kinda funny, so, um, my dad and I, when we used to go hunting on and this was on somebody else's property, but he would set me on, like, one ridge on, like, a big boulder, and then he would go, a couple 100 yards away on another one, and we'd be able to we were on Blaze Orange, so we'd be able to see each other, and we had walkie-talkies that we said, if one of us shoots, turn on the walkie-talkie, or we would start talking, like, at 9 a.m. Anyway, long story short, I remember at, like, first light, I hear a noise behind me, and I turn around, and it's a squirrel. And maybe a half an hour later, I hear a noise again behind me, and I turn around thinking it's a squirrel, and it's this black bear, probably 20 yards. He was very close to me, and like I said, my first rifle was a 243, and this was actually on Thanksgiving morning. And so I just did what I'd learned to do with the deer, just put it right behind his shoulder and shot. Well, what I didn't know was that obviously, 243 is a great deer rifle. It's not a very good bear gun because even though the shot was perfect, he turned and charged me. And fortunately, even though I hadn't trained or anything, I just instinct, I sat there and loaded my gun on him as he's charging me. And, at the last minute, I remember, um, he was so close, I couldn't even see the crosshairs in my scope. I could just see black, and I remember just pulling that 5th shot and then putting my gun down, and he was coming close, and I kinda just stepped back, and he kinda took a swipe, but then just kept running down the mountain. So anyway, I'm out of bullets, I'm out of breath. I get on the radio to my dad, and, he tells the story funny. He said, "All he could understand from me saying was, 'Bear, blood everywhere.'" So he thought I'd been attacked by a bear. And so he hauled ass from that other ridge, and made it to me probably in less than 10 minutes, probably the fastest he's ever moved. And, fortunately, when he gets there, he thought he was going to see an injured son, but fortunately, he saw how excited I was. And so we ended up tracking him down the mountain. And, when we ended up, skinning him later that day, all 5 shots were perfect, kill shots. It was just a small bullet that, just didn't do enough damage on him.
So you saw him, he was 20 yards away, shot, and then he charged at you the way you talked about it, like he wasn't sure if he was going to charge at you or not, and like ran right by you while you're kind of like trying to get that last shot off.
No, he definitely charged me, and then it just so happened after I fired that last shot and I put my gun down to see where he was because I could barely see him through that scope, he was so close. He kinda it was kind of like, it was a swipe, but then, I kinda stepped away, and so it was kind of like he was doing a running and tumbling down the ridge, if that makes sense, and then he kinda just ran away.
Sounds like something from a Matrix movie, like slow motion out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's from what I remember, it all happened, very I guess those moments are very slow motion, but it happened very quickly.
Was it a bolt action 243?
Yeah. Yes.
Man, you must have been.
Yeah, and I probably if I had to repeat it, I don't know if I'd be able to, shoot that fast with it again.
Good thing it didn't jam on you.
Yeah, I know.
The lever action would have been a little bit quicker.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm very lucky.
So you knew he was down.
Yeah, I mean, I felt good obviously about the first shot, but then, there was when we immediately started tracking him, I mean, it was a pretty good blood trail, so it was just a matter of, I think he ended up making we probably had to trail him for about a mile before we caught up to him.
Are you kidding me? I know a 243 isn't going to drop him on the spot, but my
Yeah,
gosh, that's long.
yeah. No, it's just, like I said, they were all pretty well-placed shots. They just didn't do enough damage. He just had a lot of fat on him and everything.
I suppose the fur a little bit, but if they're really fat, it might slow them down a little bit, especially if the bullet wasn't designed for it. It could have disintegrated faster. What about this big buck you haven't topped yet? Sometime around the same age.
Yeah, that was, I believe I was 12, and, it was opening day of deer season, we were hunting on my family's property. He came by, I think that he was following a couple does if I remember right, but, I shot him and I knew at the time, I mean, I didn't nowadays, I take a little more time to take a good look at the rack before I pull the trigger, but I remember when he was in my scope, and I think I was using the 243 as well, all I saw was antlers, and so I knew he was a shooter, and, yeah, I got him on the spot, and that was I think my dad the same day, I think he got a buck too, so it was a pretty good opening day for us.
Had your dad killed bigger bucks to that point?
At that point, no, but he did top me years later. He got a 12 pointer on our family property, several years later.
Sounds like a pretty eventful younger childhood with all those stories. How'd things change over the years? Did your style of hunting change? Your success change?
Yeah, I think a lot of it changed when my professional career started because then, after I graduated college, I moved to New York City, and there wasn't a whole lot of hunting to be done there. And then from there, I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, which, there is some hunting to be done in Florida, but at the time, I think I looked into it once and didn't really know where to go or anything, and so I kind of just brushed it aside. And then after 2.5 years in Florida, I moved to St. Louis and didn't hunt for that first year. But no, I think the hardest part of being an adult is adult hunter is finding places to hunt and finding good hunting buddies, and that's been a recurring issue, every time I've had to move in my life. But the other thing I realized too is, after not hunting probably those first 4.5 years of my career, is I realized how much I missed it and how much I needed it to be a part of my life. And so that's what I was alluding to earlier when I said I had to start finding ways to bring it back into my life, and so that's why I started incorporating into my, with my in my work travel, even if I could get, one hunt in one day, one morning, at an away city that we were doing, I was fortunate enough over the years to get a handful of good hunts that way, and then obviously, earning money, I like to say the NFL paid for a lot of good hunting trips. It also kept me from a lot of good hunting trips just because obviously football season is during hunting season. So, I missed a lot of days in the stands or in the blind, just from working all the time. But yeah, that's kind of how I had to adjust, with just trying to find access and good hunting buddies and time. Time's the biggest issue.
If you're traveling with the team or going a little bit early, how are you doing that? Paying for like a guided hunt or packing a rifle?
So it varied. There were a couple of times like when I went to Minnesota, when I went to Washington State, and I was hunting with a buddy. I would just borrow one of their guns, and I would just take my boots, my clothes, things like that. Um, or when I think like when I went to Arizona to get a mountain lion, I borrowed my guide's gun, things like that. Because the NFL has a rule, obviously, that you can't have guns on any of the premises or team planes or anything like that. So. I always just kinda borrow people's and make do with it.
Some of those guys probably don't need to be around guns.
Yeah.
So, of all the trips you or hunting sessions you had while traveling for work at some of these away games, what were some of your favorite states to hunt?
Definitely love Arizona, where I got my mountain lion. I mean, I just remember I got mine. I mean, they have a lot of public land. I mean, we probably hunted 50,000 acres of public land and didn't see a hunter the whole time. And they have, jumped a lot of quail out there, which, you don't it's very few places in the country where you can see, an abundance of wild quail. So I love that. I loved Washington State when I went for pheasant hunting. We hunted on a Native American reservation and saw just a lot of birds out there. Um, Minnesota, like I said, with that was a great pheasant hunt as well. Um, Texas is one of my favorite states to hunt. There's just thing I love about Texas. Is just, obviously it's good waterfowl hunting, but even when you're deer hunting, you just never know what's gonna come out, if it's gonna be a predator, if it's a javelina, things like that, and that's why, I enjoy Texas. Then to Colorado, I took my dad to Colorado, he got a Boone and Crockett mule deer out there. They got some monsters out there.
When you went to Minnesota to pheasant hunt, was that your first time pheasant hunting?
No, when I grew up hunting in, uh, Maryland, we had permission to hunt on a farm in Hagerstown, Maryland, and they had a lot of pheasants there, so that's where I got my first pheasant.
Well, they had pheasants out there, huh?
But yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's funny now because all those farms are now, uh, they've been, demolished, the farms are gone, and now Hagerstown, Maryland, which used to be country, is now considered part of the DC area, which is very weird to me to think of.
There's no pheasants where you're at now, is there?
No. No, but when I lived in Pittsburgh, to work for the Steelers, um, they had a lot of pheasants there and a lot of public land, and, people I know nowadays people think that, South Dakota is like the pheasant capital of the country, but when I was a kid, that was Pennsylvania. A lot of people don't remember that, but I remember taking a family vacation to Hershey Park, Pennsylvania, and my dad and I were going crazy in the car because there were pheasants flying all over the place across the road, both sides of the road. Um, but it just, for whatever reason, predators or loss of habitat, the pheasant numbers declined. But that state does a great job of their pheasant program. I think they actually like import pheasants from South Dakota and they release them early and they banned them. And so I had an opportunity up there to harvest a few banded pheasants, which was pretty cool.
Pheasant hunting's a lot of fun, isn't it?
It is. It's definitely probably my top 3, and my wife makes a very mean, delicious honey baked pheasant, so I love, getting them for her.
You'd rather dove hunt than pheasant hunt?
I would, just because of the action and obviously the daily limit's a little higher, or a lot higher, I should say.
So, how are you dove hunting? Just setting up on a food plot?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's, trying to find a cornfield or sunflower fields and, something that has power lines and gravel and water, good flyway, things like that.
And is there a lot of competition? I know dove season in Iowa is a little bit shorter. I've only been once or twice, but a lot of times public hunting will have food plots for doves and everybody will show up and there's BBs flying everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I hunted, for doves in public when I lived in Missouri, and, definitely got peppered a couple times. I mean, it's like World War III, and it's a little unnerving just because you don't know those people that are shooting, how well they were trained, if they even took a hunter safety course, things like that, but, I love it so much that it's almost worth the risk of getting peppered.
Make sure you wear your safety glasses.
Yeah, absolutely, I do. Yeah, I'm one of the few people out there, I feel like that, I wear my earmuffs almost as, probably bigger than these, and I wear these giant safety glasses that protect the sides of my face as well, just as I don't wanna take the chance, it's not worth it.
Yep, very cool. So, the mountain lion you shot in Arizona, how'd that go down?
So that was, without a doubt, one of that was the most physically tough hunts I've ever been on, and, um, had a great guide. His name was, Jim Bedlion, which, irony of him having the word lion in his last name when he's a mountain lion guide. But, it was actually a two-part hunt. I went out there one time, I think it was in February, spent a week out there, and, we got on some trails, just never got to tree, and the great thing about Arizona is the mountain lion tags. It's over the counter and it's good for literally the whole year. And so that same year, at the time I was working for the Rams and we were actually playing the Arizona Cardinals who were in our division. And so I flew out there on Christmas Day and the next day, which I think was earlier in the week, and the next day I hunted with him. I think it only took maybe 2 days before we had a game, and we were able to. We were just driving up these country roads, in the Kaibab National Forest near the Grand Canyon, and once the hounds strike the trail, you're hauling ass trying to keep up with these dogs that, they were always at least one ridge ahead of us, and so we they treat them, and we get up there, and, before I could catch my breath to get a shot, the cat jumped out of the tree, and, um dogs treat him again, and then I was able to take him and harvest him before he jumped down into the Grand Canyon.
Was that an adrenaline rush?
It was, and like I said, it was physically demanding because the terrain out there, it's obviously a steep incline, you're on a mountain, but it's very loose rocks, there was some snow on the ground, there was, a lot of cactus. I mean, there were some parts of the hunt where, I literally had to grab hold of 2 handfuls of cactus just to pull myself up, and I remember there was a part where we had to it's just because the cat, I think, had jumped across, this ridge, and so we had to hand each other each of the I think it was probably about 10 hound dogs, cross, over this mountain, to so they could get back on the trail. I mean, it was a rough hunt, yeah, I don't know if I could do it again at my age. I was a lot younger back then when I did it.
I bet. I don't think people realize how big they are. I've never seen one in person, but I've seen people holding them, and they're just
Yeah,
massive cats.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, they average, probably anywhere about 120 pounds, and then, if you go some places like Utah and stuff, they can get up to probably 200 pounds.
You said after you shot it, it jumped in the canyon or something?
Well, no, he had once they treat it, when we first treat it, he got it they call it a little wild, and he jumped out of the tree because usually when the dogs tree it, it's game over, but he wasn't ready to give up, and so, he jumped out, and then they were able to tree him again, but it was we ended up where I shot him, he ended up it was very close to the Grand Canyon, and so we were just worried, if he had jumped out again, we probably wouldn't have caught up to him before he got to the Grand Canyon.
How far away from the Grand Canyon? We talking like couple hundred yards or miles or what?
Um, Good question, probably only couple miles, if that.
Okay. Yeah, you don't wanna be climbing up and down that, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah. I mean, I couldn't see the Grand Canyon from where he was, but I trusted my guide when he's tell me the direction that, the Grand Canyon was close, so
What about that other cat you got behind you?
that was a leopard I got in Mozambique in 2015. Yeah, that was one of the best hunts I mean, it was the best hunt I've ever been on. Originally went primarily for the leopard and ended up with, 4 of the dangerous 7. But yeah, got that leopard on, I believe it was the second to last night of a 2-week hunt, and, he was a big cat. Got him probably, think they struck the trail probably at midnight, and then by the time we caught up to him, it was probably 2 or 3 in the morning.
What else did you kill?
So, originally, I was going for the leopard, a crocodile, and a zebra, and as soon as I got there, my guide told me that a hippo had killed a hippo in the catata that we were hunting had killed a local villager boy, and so the villagers had gone to the local government and asked, if they could help them, and the government said no, but they asked my outfitter, "Hey, do you have," well, they knew I was coming in because you have to get permits and everything well in advance. Anyway, he asked me, he said at the time, they didn't have a quota for hippos, so he said, "It's been designated a problem, animal," and they would let me shoot it without charging me for it, but, I couldn't export a single piece of the hippo, it's purely if I wanted to help them. So I said, "Absolutely." And so we spent about 2 days, scouting it out and talking to the villagers where it was because, these villagers, they share these, watering holes with these hippos and killer crocodiles, to do all their bathing and fishing and things like that. And, so we set up a blind and we waited, like I said, for basically 2 days. By the second day, towards the end of the day, um, all of a sudden you hear like it sounded like a water monster, and you see the water birds flying everywhere. And he emerged, his head out of the water. But before I could get my crosshairs on him, he quickly popped back down. And then about a half an hour later, he popped back up, and my guide, Poon Van Zyl, he whispered in my ear. He said, "Put it between his eyes and pull the trigger," and I did, and I felt good about the shot, and it was like a tidal wave. And then he dropped or he sunk, and their bodies have so much gas in them that it can take hours for them to rise up. So he said, "Hey, if you felt good about the shot," he said, Let's leave. We'll come back tomorrow and get him." So the next morning we go back, and as soon as we pull up, the entire village was out there, just cheering, and so about a handful of them jump into the water, this snake infested water, crocodile infested, and they dragged the hippo, as close as they could, and then they got a tractor, and then, they immediately started butchering it right there on the shore, and we lined up every, villager single file line, and the butchers would hand me a big chunk of hippo, and I'd turn and hand it to each villager until literally the entire thing was gone. And then, probably the proudest moment of my life or as a hunter was the boy's mom. She was very appreciative, and it just felt good to be able to bring her some solace, for a grieving mother, kind of avenge her son.
This is fascinating. Okay, I have so many questions. Where do I start? 1, how do they know it's the same hippo? Is there only 1 hippo in the area?
Yeah, they're very territorial.
Really? That's different from National Geographic. It looks like hippos all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a huge watering hole. I mean, it was like I said, it was a pretty small watering hole, and that was his. And they just because of the timing, like I said, he had hung out there ever since the day he killed the boy. So they were seeing him just about every day.
Okay, so they share the same watering hole, the people, the village. You said something about killing crocodiles and baiting?
I'm saying they share these watering holes with killer crocodiles and hippos and snakes and everything. And it's the only source of water that they use for bathing and for fishing and
Bathing?
bathing. Yeah, yeah,
Thought you said baiting.
no.
Okay, so that's crazy.
Yeah, they're defenseless against these animals because not only do they not have the weapons to defend themselves, but it's against the law if they did because they work hand in hand with the local government, um, for to enable with the numbers for quotas so that hunters can come in and be successful, and then the hunters donate the meat to the locals, and so it's kind of like a very good working partnership.
So people can come in and hunt because it generates revenue, but the locals can't kill a lot of the stuff there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and if they do, you know, they're arrested for poaching.
I suppose every country has hunting regulations like we do in the US.
Yeah, where I was hunting, it was a very regulated area where I was hunting where the they literally fly a bush plane, very low and fly over these millions of acres of Katahdin and say, "Okay, we counted 1,000 Cape buffalo this year, so we're only gonna issue, 50 tags," things like that. It's very scientific, and based, with the animals in mind and good conservation. My leopard was one of only 2 tags that they gave for the entire year on 2,000,000 acres. And the great thing about that is, we had seen a lot of leopards before we got mine. We'd seen them on camera, we'd seen their tracks, and they were, younger or smaller. And the thing about mine is he was an old Tom that he was too old to breed, but he was still territorial, so he wasn't letting any of the younger leopards breed. And so by me taking him out of the ecosystem, now the leopard population is going to thrive because now all the young leopards that weren't able to mate because he was kicking them out of the area, now they can mate and expand the population.
We'll come back to that. I want to ask some more questions about this hippo. So, first off, they said you couldn't export to the US. What are you going to bring, like the whole hippo back and mount it? Maybe a tusk or something?
Yeah, I would have brought, they let you like the leopard and the other animals I got, they let you bring the hides and the skulls. So yeah, I would have brought the skull and the skull, the hide, and the tusk. But my outfitter, he says that the tusks are sitting in the campfire waiting for me to come back and make another hunt so I could visit it again.
It doesn't seem like a hide that you would want.
Yeah, I mean it would have been more for just a taxidermy mount than anything.
Kind of a good conversation piece.
Yeah, but I think I saw I forget the name of the company. But there's a company that they make replicas of animals that you can't export, and so I think eventually, maybe one of these years, I might see if they can make a replica based on the pictures and measurements I have of it.
Like a full, like just a head or what?
I would just do a head mount coming out of like a water habitat, similar. But whenever I try to honor the animals that I harvest, and I try to do it, the exact same habitat and situation and pose and position that they were doing, when they were harvested.
I suppose it wouldn't be that much bigger than like compared to like a buffalo mount or something. Like those heads got to be giant, aren't they?
Yeah, no, he wasn't, and I have a picture of the skull. I mean, it looks like the skull made it look like a dinosaur. I mean, that's how big he was. I mean, he was a 2-ton animal. I mean, I actually wrote an article for American Hunter magazine, just kind of telling the story. Because at the time when I was over there, that's when that dentist had harvested Cecil the lion in a different country. And so when I came back from, like I said, it was the greatest hunt of my life. And I was very proud, especially of the hippo. But, a lot of people were just kind of, down on hunting because of that. And I said, nobody knows the story of that except for that hunter and his guide. And I said, Hunters worldwide do a lot of good for people. They're the best conservationists in the world." And I said, "People need to know what we do." And so I wanted to write that article about, literally feeding a village. Like I could, if I die tomorrow, I can say, "Hey, I literally fed a village." And like I said, I avenged, a poor boy, poor little boy, and tried to bring some solace to his a grieving mother.
So when you're feeding a village, the way you described it or the way I visualize, it's not like you're grilling it up there and giving them food. There's just something for them to take home and save for later or what?
Yeah, and, they have a technique, I forgot what it's called, but, they actually have a technique, obviously, they don't have refrigerators in the village, but they do something about, um, digging a hole and putting it in the ground, and that way it doesn't spoil, I guess, for, you know, I don't know, maybe a week or so, but yeah, I mean, there literally was not a single inch of that hippo that went to waste, which is great, that's how it should be, and I tried it myself, it tastes like liver.
It's not very good.
No, I mean, I can eat liver and onions maybe once a year, and so I filled my quota eating that hippo that year.
Who was this guy that shot the lion? What was the lion's name?
It was they called the lion Cecil the lion, but it was some dentist that, he was just accused of wrongdoing, and, um, so, a lot of anti-hunters were up in arms, and the poor guy ended up losing his dentist practice, but, I remember reading this was several months down the line, there was, like, a very tiny line in a newspaper that said he was cleared of all wrongdoing. Well, it's like, great, well, you ruined the guy's life, because you overreacted and, he lost his business, probably had to move, so, yeah, it's just there's a lot of, I think, closed-minded people that just don't understand, the value and the meaning of hunting.
What's the story of Cecil the lion? Is some famous lion or something?
Well, I guess it was famous to people that were visiting it on non-hunting safaris, and so I guess they had nicknamed him Cecil, and so I guess when Cecil crossed from this protected property into a hunting property, the hunter harvested him, and then when word got out, that he was dead, like I said, everybody overreacted about it.
How do you know it's Cecil? They all look the same.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you got this hippo. Then what else did you get when you were over there?
Well, like I said, I got the leopard towards the end of the safari, but then in between, well, I should say the very first thing I got was a zebra. That was the first thing I got. And I remember when we were hunting the zebra, it's on this great floodplain, but in the trees surrounding the floodplain were all these baboons that they act as like the watchdogs of the jungle, and so they literally bark like dogs. So it's a wide open floodplain, nowhere to hide. So we have to kind of like crawl, belly crawl to try to get within range. Well, every time we got probably within, 400 yards, these baboons would sit there and bark, and then you see every animal on the floodplain take off running. And so in the back of my mind, I remember, baboon wasn't on my list to begin with, but they annoyed me a little bit after busting our hern a couple of times. And so I asked my guide, I said, "Hey, are they in season?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you have a permit I could buy?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." And so, I think that maybe the day after the zebra, we came across and I'm not sure the proper terminology of a group of baboons, but we came across them, and I got a pretty big one. That I also ate him, which was actually surprising. It's very sweet, sweet meat. And then I had him taxidermied as well. We got that. And then the other thing that I didn't have on my list, which I should have, was Cape Buffalo. We spent a day in the swamp, leech infested swamp hunting Cape Buffalo. Kept getting busted, never got a shot on them. But then, ironically, I think another day when we were in a forest, we came across one. We ended up tracking for a couple miles, and I was able to catch up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was. They called him. I'm sure you've heard of the term Dagger Boy, which is what they call the very very old ornery Cape Buffalo, that they're loners because they just everything pisses them off. They want to fight everything, fight each other, fight everything. And so, that was kind of good to take him out of the population, and ate him as well. I think the morning I left, and that was some of the best beef I've ever had in my life. The zebra was good as well. Um, and then was able to harvest a crocodile. I think he was about almost 13 feet long. Um, the thing about the crocodiles there, we were in the Zambezi River Delta several years ago. Oxford University did a study because these crocodiles are known for their high kill rate of people. The crocodile, I was expecting, I've hunted alligators in Florida before, and delicious meat, very healthy. So I was expecting the crocodile to taste like that. But when we ate that, it was terrible. Tasted nothing like an alligator. And apparently, part of the reason why it tastes so bad is because they eat so many people and other things that affects the way they taste. And so that was, yeah, that was the only disappointing thing there that I ate that didn't like it. And then in between,
Hold on, hold
hunts.
on. So you might have ate another human.
No, no, not the might have, but when the thing with the crocodiles there,
You
when
don't
you get
know
the
that. This crocodile could have ate somebody.
it could have, that's one of the things they do there too, is when you bring a crocodile to shore, again, the villagers come out and you kind of open up their stomach there to see if there's any human remains, just of, like I said, anybody potentially missing, things like that.
It's that common, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I forget what these statistics were, but yeah, it was very common. The canoes that these villagers are fishing in are smaller than the crocodiles. And so I can only imagine, they're out there on these canoes fishing and, I could easily see a hippo or a crocodile just capsizing these small canoes and having their way with them.
The way you're talking is more common than a whitetail losing one of her fawns. I like to hear more detail on some of these stories. So the bamboo, that must have been pretty cool, kinda like if a doe snorts at you, getting them back a little bit.
Yeah, and, again, it was, so the way the baboons, the way they travel or whatever is, they're in these trees, like I said, kind of on the edges of the floodplain, and then when they come down from the trees one by one, you wait for the last one, which is, like, the biggest and the oldest one. He's, like, the leader of the group. Um, so, that's what I did, and, like I said, he was a pleasant surprise to eat.
When you were hunting zebras, they were in trees,
The baboons, yeah, the baboons were in the trees that surrounded this wide open floodplain.
and when you shot yours, it wasn't in a tree?
It was, but I waited for it to come on the ground.
Okay. Then did all the other baboons just take off running?
Yeah, they all came down the trees one by one, and then I waited for him. He was the last one because he was the oldest and the leader of the group, so I took him.
And, when you shot, they all scattered? Okay. Now the zebra, how'd that go down?
So the zebra, like I said, it's a wide open floodplain, um, but I should say on the way to the floodplain, I'll never forget this because this was part of the my introduction to Africa is we see across the floodplain a couple of our trackers and they're stopped and they're acting very weird. And so my guide says, "Hey, something's up. Maybe they came across a leopard or something." He's like, "Let's go, run after them, see what's up there." Well, as we're running through the floodplain, we come across these two uh mating huge, I mean, they were probably at least 12 feet long, African rock pythons, which they're some of the largest snakes in the world. So my guide tells me, he says, "Don't let them get a hold of you. I won't be able to get them off you." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, thanks for the heads up." Anyway, when we finally get up to the trackers, there was a third African rock python, which apparently he probably lost the mating battle with this other one, and it was the fastest, most aggressive snake I've ever come across, to the point where he was kinda slithering towards me, and I'm backpedaling as fast as I could, and he was pretty close to catching up and just kinda snapping, and to the point where my guide, who he was a little bit crazy, he's a rugby player, if that tells you the mentality, but he actually grabbed him by the tail to give me a chance to kinda get completely away from him, because, of course, I wanted to shoot him. He said, "No," they said, "They're protected animals, so we couldn't." But yeah, that was quite the encounter with these pythons. But yeah, the zebras, they obviously travel in herds, and it's a wide open floodplain, and so we had to belly crawl to get. I think the closest we got when I finally took a shot was.
I gotta stop you here. You're skipping all over all the good parts, man. So this you're telling me if a python is coming at you like that, you can't shoot it, so you just grab it by the tail and run away?
Yeah, I mean, they don't when the government's over there tell you, an animal's hands off, you don't mess with them. You don't want to be thrown in a Mozambique jail, without trial or anything like that.
Yeah, wear a GoPro or something so they can see the snake coming after you. Kinda little CYA.
I will say, I before I went on that hunt, I bought the latest GoPro and all the gadgets because I was going to film it. And damn if that thing, that first day, damn if that thing didn't work. I don't know what the deal was. I don't know if it was like because I had it like the remote control, I had all the stuff, and it didn't work. And because I had turned it on for like I said, the zebra was the first part of the hunt. And yeah, after maybe 10 minutes, I said, "You know what? I'm here to hunt." It would have been nice to get it on camera, but so be it. It didn't work for me. And I returned the damn thing as soon as I got back to the States. It's very disappointing. So you will not hear me endorse GoPro when it comes to hunting.
Ruin some good memories. It We'll get onto the zebra, but it kinda I heard somebody talking about, I think I've heard a couple things like Matthew McConaughey was talking about how things used to be in the old times when people would be out watching the event and just see it through their eyes. Now they see it through their phones. And I don't know if it's the same conversation or not, but somebody was talking about like their hunts are like for their eyes only. And you were talking earlier, like nobody knows what happens besides you and the guide or the hunter and the guide. It's kind of like he said, when I go out to hunt, it's my sacred memory. I don't want to share it with anybody. And I kind of feel the same way. And there's something special about that too. So maybe it's a good thing that the GoPro died, but it would have been kind of, you got some good stories so far.
Yeah, no, it would have been very cool, especially when the leopard charged me. That would have been very cool to see. But yeah, like I said,
Hold on. Oh,
unfortunately,
oh man, we'll get there. You're breadcrumbing me on all this good stuff. So you almost get attacked by this python. And okay, so we'll go on to the zebra.
yeah. And so the zebra, it was a good way to start the hunt because like I said, it was in wide open floodplain. They were in a herd. We kinda had to pick out, the largest male, and then, you belly crawl as close as you can, before they take off, and so I think that was the farthest shot in the field I've ever made. It was over 400 yards, and the other thing they do is, when you hit them, it kinda I forgot what my guide was saying, but the skin kinda covers up the bullet, so it's not like you can sit there and see if them bleed or not, and so, he was watching, he said, "It's a good hit," and, he eventually, dropped, after a few seconds, and so that was kind of the good start to the hunt.
Was it how many times did you have to try sneaking up on them before you finally got a shot?
Um, I feel like the baboons busted us at least twice, maybe a third time.
And after you shot the bamboo,
Well, we shot I shot the baboon after the zebra, so, yeah, it was a recurring problem at the time. And it's just nothing you can do about it. You just have to adjust to it.
how big are the zebras?
They're pretty big. Obviously I don't know if they're like officially part of the equine family like a horse, but yeah, I'd say it's probably size of a donkey,
Okay.
maybe bigger.
Okay.
Had a nice rug made out of them.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Now to the jaguar.
Leopard. Yeah, the leopard.
Oh,
Yeah, the
leopard.
leopard.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we start. Like I said, that was the primary reason I was there, and we started hunting him from day one with just checking trail cams, setting baits. That was one thing that I was able to take. Some plains game like reed buck and warthog that we were using as bait. A couple places they were able to they go out every night and they were able to kind of look at tracks and you can they're so smart over there, the trackers and the guy that you can tell the size obviously just from trail cams and just the size of their prints. Usually if you put like a cigarette or a rifle shell in the paw print on a track, if it's obviously if the shell of the cigarette fills that paw, it's a pretty good size cat. But yeah, I was getting a little worried with him because, like I said, as the days were going on, they kept saying, "Oh, it's not big enough, not big enough." And I said, "Hey guys, we're running out of days. Like I like that you guys have high standards, and I do too. But eventually, I want to go. I don't want to go home empty-handed." But second to last night, I get, the guy, my guide comes and knocks on I was staying in a little hut, and he said, "Hey, they just struck a trail on a leopard. We're leaving in 5 minutes." And I don't think I've ever gotten dressed faster to go on a hunt than I did that night. And so we had to drive. I mean, they were probably at least 45 minutes away from where they struck the trail. And then the one very cool thing is I don't know if you're familiar with the animal a pangolin. Pangolin, but they're like these shelled it's kind of like a cross between an anteater and an armadillo, and they're endangered species, but they're very rare to see. And we actually saw one not only on the way to hunt the leopard, but on the way back, which I was told is very rare. I mean, there's some locals there that they've never seen one their whole life. So, it's just seeing one was obviously a sign of good luck. But uh, so when we finally get on the trail, it was myself, my guide Poon, and then the houndsman who had he had a like a 7-foot spear, and I was kind of laughing. I was like, "What are you going to do with that?" And he's like, "Actually, he's like, if the leopard gets on you and attacks you, he's like, you're not going to want Poon shooting you, with your 416 to get him off you." He's like, so I walk up and I stab him off you. And I was like, oh, good point. That's come to handy because I'd read a stat and I might have it wrong, but leopard attacks, they inflict, I think it's something like 200 stitches uh, per second, or either per second or per minute. I think it's per second. And they usually don't their attacks, they usually don't kill the people. What kills the people is the recovery because of all the bacteria that's in their fangs and their claws, things like that. But so yeah, we ventured out and we had just one headlight um among uh the three of us, because one of the things they said is that these leopards that when they're treed, they attack anything. They'll attack, where the light's coming from or whatever. And so one of the things he told me is he said, um, even if it's a perfect shot, he said, be prepared for it to charge because apparently their adrenaline keeps them alive for, X number of minutes, maybe 10 minutes or whatever. But in those 10 minutes, they just go on a killing rampage, whether with, like I said, with whatever's in sight. And so we caught up to him. It was probably about,
Is it dark when you're doing this?
oh, pitch dark, pitch dark. And like I said, we only had the one headlamp among us, um, but we caught up to him probably about 80 yards or so, and he tells me, he says, "Put it behind his shoulder." I did. I felt good about the shot. Well,
When there's, like, a spotlight on the leopard?
yeah, and then, well, it was the headlamp. We were just using that for
Yep.
the headlamp, and so, sure enough, he jumps out of the tree, and you hear one of the dogs start whining because he started killing dogs as he jumped out of the tree. And then it was like a scene from a horror movie where uh, he's charging us, running towards us, but all we could see was the leaves from the palm trees moving, and then you could hear, which I'll never forget the sound because it was just getting louder and angrier as he was getting closer to us. Um, and then I was able, the other thing they warned me about beforehand is they said, "Wait until he's at the end of your barrel before you pull the trigger," because they said some hunters have emptied their guns before he was even close. They've thrown their guns down and ran. They've, shot dogs. They've shot trackers. And so, anyway, I was fortunate enough, to put the follow-up shot, before he got to us, and, he ended up being, pretty good sized tom.
Okay. Let me just think for a second. Were you shitting your pants before you were shooting?
No, everything happened so fast that I didn't have a thing. It
Before
wasn't
the
a
initial shot?
no. No, the only thing that I was nervous about was, the way he was standing in the tree. I didn't feel confident about the shot, but they told me, they said, "Look," they said, uh, we gotta take the shot because he's about to jump out now, and if he jumps out, he's gonna kill dogs, and we don't know if we'll get to him again." And so, yeah, I was, not completely comfortable with the shot, but like I said, it ended up being a good shot. It took out both of his lungs, but like I said, even with his lungs being blasted out, he still put up a fight till the end.
What'd you shoot him with?
I used a 300 Win Mag for everything over there except the Cape Buffalo, and then I used a 416 on him.
Even the hippo too?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so how far away was this leopard when you put the final shot on him?
Uh, I mean, he was right there. I mean, he was probably less than 10 yards, 5, 10
Does
yards.
this gun have a scope? I don't imagine are you looking through the scope when they're that close?
No, not the second shot.
I'm just trying to think if I was ever in that situation.
But it happened so fast that I didn't have time to think about it until after the second shot, and then, kind of all the adrenaline rushed out of me. I'm like, "Oh my god, what just happened?"
So it's pretty common for him to charge hunters like that.
Yeah, yeah,
What if they charge the guy with the spear? You're responsible for protecting him?
yeah, yeah, I was the one with the rifle.
The guy doesn't even carry a rifle?
He had one, but I think he was carrying something less than my 4.16. Oh, I forgot what he was carrying. Maybe he had the 4.16. I had the 300 Win Mag, and he had the 4.16.
If that happened once, why are they going back out again?
Yeah.
Okay. So, couple things I wanted to ask you. You're staying in a hut?
Yeah,
Describe
it
this
was
hut.
yeah, no, it was pretty good. Yeah, so I went, probably the 2 best hunts I've
Probably
ever
nothing
done.
like a Marriott.
No, no, but I went with, Expedition Adventures, Colonel Dennis Barons and Gordy White. They're based out of San Antonio, and it's no coincidence that 2 best hunts I've ever been on my life, both Mozambique and Argentina. I booked through them, but, yeah, it was great accommodations. I stayed in my own little hut. Um, they had great meals. That was one of the things when, the first night I was there, I think they cooked me like chicken or something, and they told me, they said, "Hey, you need to provide on this hunt. You need to provide food for, you know, everybody in camp, the staff." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I'll do that, but," I said, "we're gonna eat everything that I hunt." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, if I get a crocodile, we're eating the crocodile. Baboon, baboon." And so they thought it was a little weird, but they thought it was cool too because they knew better than to eat the crocodile, which, like I said earlier, I didn't know it didn't taste well, but yeah, we ended up, eating everything that I was able to harvest, and what we didn't eat, we donated to the local villagers.
When they expected you to provide, what else do they mean? Like pay for it or what?
No, 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 no. Just being able to, it was kind of like their way of saying, "Hey, we're not going to eat unless you're successful in the field that day," things like that. But I would do things like when we were out hunting for bait for the leopard, like, I'd shoot like an extra reed buck, and that would be meat for the camp, things like that. Um, And the other interesting thing about the hut I was staying in is there was, they had people at night, they had guards, with machine guns that would stay on the lookout for, you never knew if like a lion or an elephant was gonna come through camp. But there was this one I remember one night there was like this huge warthog that he was outside my hut, and snorting everything and trying to come in, and, I was just fortunately, he didn't, but I do remember, the last morning before I left, had a found a scorpion in my shoe, so that would have been a very painful, long flight home if he had gotten me, before I got him.
Trying to visualize these huts. It's gotta be nicer than what the village people stay in, isn't it?
Uh, Probably, yeah. I mean, I had running water. I could take a shower. Yeah, everything was run by they had everything solar energy powered. So so you would have um maybe 30 minutes in the morning or 30 minutes in the evening if you wanted to take a shower and have electricity. Do things like that. So like I said, it was a great setup.
It's not like a dirt floor hut, is it?
No, no,
So the people in San Antonio built these huts out there?
no, no. The outfitters. It was Zambezi Delta Safaris. They're the ones in Mozambique that they built these huts. And I mean, I remember them telling me when I was there, they've actually hosted, like, royalty, royalty from other countries that because like, when we flew in, like, on a bush plane, you had this very little runway, and I remember them telling me that one time, because they had I think he was like a prince or something from some country, that they, like, expanded the runway and built, like, all new, huts and everything for his, like, private jet to land and things like that. So, very, very accommodating people.
Anything else cool happen on this trip?
I mean, I remember the very first day when we stepped out into the field, my guide was in front of me, and I walk out side by side with him, and he stops me and he says, "Walk directly behind me everywhere I step," because in Mozambique, they had, I wanna say in the '90s, I could be wrong, but they had a pretty bad civil war, and there were so many mines left over in this area and, where we were hunting that the United Nations after the Civil War, they couldn't possibly get all the mines, and so that was a little different for me to be like, "Wow, I've never hunted land that had mines in it." Um, and then even when I got off the plane in Mozambique, the first thing they do is they scan they had a little scanner to scan your eyes for Ebola, and I was like, "Wow, where where am I? I'm definitely not, not in Kansas anymore."
Was it just temporary that you had to watch out for mines?
Yeah, I mean, it was in they I think they pretty much, because obviously they hunt that concession that they kinda knew where the problem areas would be, and so it was just a matter of me not straying from where my guide was.
How much was this trip? That sounds like well worth the money.
Uh, it was a lot, I won't give a figure. I would say, after I got over the sticker price shock, I just kinda went with it and but when I got back, I'll say it was worth every penny.
Without hearing a price tag, it had to have been worth the money.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the biggest things are, the permit for the leopard that costs a lot. Um, that obviously costs the most, but, yeah.
You could tell I was pretty into the conversation, and you were leaving out a lot of details, man.
Sorry. I guess, yeah, I get excited, it's just kinda the memories come flowing back, and I just kinda jump all over.
But you're like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, we ran by some pythons and oh, that's see, we're all over the place. You talked about killing this buffalo, and then you just went on to something else. How'd that go down?" So you ran into him in the forest and tracked him down.
Yeah. Yeah, we tracked him down, a couple miles, and it was very cool, the tractors there, the main tractor we use, his name was Gochi, I'll never forget him, but they're pretty good about when you see the big piles of dung, he puts his finger in it and he can tell from the temperature, like how old the pile is, how far behind them we are, things like that. Like I was waiting for him to stick his finger in his mouth and tell me a more precise time, which fortunately he didn't. But yeah, we ended up we were able to kind of close the gap and stock up on it was actually two of them together. And I remember again, Poon kind of saying, he said, "Hey, they're getting ready to charge, but you better go ahead and shoot one of them." And we did. Unfortunately, the second one did not charge.
I thought you said he was some whatever you called it, a loner or something.
Boy, yeah. I mean, it was rare, but there were two Boys together at this point. Yeah,
And out of everything you shot, you brought pieces back for everything
yeah,
except
hides
the
and
hippo.
skulls. Yeah, hides and skulls for everything.
And I bet that was a fun taxidermy bill. What'd you do with the crocodile?
Uh, can't.
I can't see it. You might have to send me some pictures.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's it's like he's emerging from a water habitat with his mouth open.
What else do you got mounted?
Oh, the other thing I had with the crocodile, well, with is I had a belt and a wallet made. I had a nice gun case made out of the Cape buffalo hide.
Some cowboy boots would be pretty cool from the crocodile.
Well, I have cowboy boots made out of one of my alligators, so I didn't want to replicate that.
That I mean, just from hearing that, that's well worth whatever you pay. That sounds like a trip of a lifetime. That
It was.
Argentina hunt kind of compared to that.
Yeah, Argentina. I went to Argentina. I took my dad down there in 2007. That was kind of special because my mom was born in Argentina. So, like I said, dove hunting was our favorite. I was down there in 4 days, and some of the 4 days, two of them were only half day hunts. But I shot almost 4,400 doves in those 4 days. Got almost 3,200 in a single day. So I mean, they literally fly by the millions down there. I mean, they're pests to the farmers. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Hopefully, you're not supplying the ammo.
Well, the ammo is kinda so the hunt overall is not that expensive, but where they get you is the ammo bill because, what they do is, you know, they're keeping track, they'll bring you, like, a case of ammo, and they just during the hunt, they just keep bringing you cases of ammo. Well, they're keeping track of that, and then at the end of the week, they give you the ammo bill, so the ammo bill was actually more than the rest of the hunt.
What'd you go through? 5,000?
I think between my father and I, yeah, it was about 5,000. I remember tell you a funny story. So at the time, I was working for the St. Louis Rams, and, I remember when I was working out one day, I was doing, like, a shoulder press machine, and I couldn't lift my right shoulder, my shooting shoulder, and, so I went to see our team doctor, and he said, "It looks like you've suffered trauma to it. Have you done anything to it recently?" And so I told him, I said, "Well," I said, "I went hunting and I shot probably, 5,000 times. And the thing about that down there is I remember the best day of shooting, it was like a torrential downpour. It's very humid. So like an idiot, I took off my shooting vest that had the pad. Well, that just turned my shoulder into jelly. But anyway, um, yeah, he had said I suffered trauma to my shoulder, and I probably couldn't lift my shoulder over my head for about a month after the hunt. But it was well worth it.
You got some pretty good stories, man.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate.
Yeah, I'm glad we got a little bit off the outline a little bit, but
Yeah,
oh, that
sorry.
no.
You'll have to have me on again so we can follow the outline.
Oh, man, that hooked me up with this guide, man. Maybe I'll sell him some hunts through my podcast, and he hooked me up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're great. Like I said, it's, Expedition Adventures, and I can give you their information. But yeah, they're great. I wouldn't I'd recommend them to anybody, and, I wouldn't book another, international trip without them. I'd like to go back to Africa one day, maybe, South Africa, and, probably since I checked Africa off my list, my new dream hunt. It's this animal in Pakistan called a Suleiman Markhor. Suleiman's obviously my last name, and it's this animal that's kind of like like a mountain goat slash sheep that has these tall spiral antlers. But it's a very expensive and very dangerous hunt. So, I'm not sure I'll ever check that off my list. That's kind of like my white whale.
What was what is it again?
It's called a Suleiman Markhor. It's kind of like a mountain, like a mountain goat with, like, these tall, spiraled antlers.
And you said that's a dangerous hunt?
It's dangerous just because it's in, the mountains of Pakistan, so I think that's kinda where the Taliban hangs out. You need to have armed
Okay.
guards with you.
Yeah, South Africa would be pretty cool. Probably
Yeah.
not as cool as where you were before.
I mean, that was one of the great things is, when and I recommend to anybody that wants to go to Africa, you just sit down and take the time to make a list of what you want because you can really, not only are there things that you might not be thinking of, like me, but when you're talking to your outfitter, like when I told him everything I wanted, Gordy White, he was great about, first thing he said is he's like, "Hey, we have this great outfitters in Mozambique with these concessions that they've done a lot of work there with the conservation to get the population numbers up. And there aren't. That's the thing is in Africa there aren't many countries where you can get both plains game and dangerous game. Mozambique's one of them. I think South Africa's another one. There might be a couple other ones, but most of the other countries that are very specialized depending on the game that you want. And I wanted every hunt that I go on, especially a paid expensive hunt, I kinda treat it like a once in a lifetime. So I try to, do all the research, book the best outfitters to give me the best chance of success. And I've had some I've gotten shut out before, on a couple hunts, that it was before I met, Gordy and Colonel Barons and didn't know any better. And, my issue too is I wanted to go on all these hunts and start checking them off my hunting bucket list. But a lot of my hunting buddies, they hadn't gone on the hunts yet. So I was kind of winging it, just with my own research. And, sometimes you can come up short with, just bad outfitters, bad guys that are just looking to take your money.
This trip you were on where you shot the leopard, was there anything you were after that you didn't get?
No, there was, when we had some time the last night, I wanted to go get a hyena. And that was very cool because I've gotten into predator hunting lately, and so, we went out and my guide Poon, he kinda rigged this, speaker to one of the Jeeps that we were hunting on, and so I was up top, and he's letting out these, predator calls, and I can't describe it, but the darkness of African nights, like, it's pitch black, but then it's also gorgeous because I've never seen the stars look the way they did. But anyway, after a few sets, we come to this one place and you could literally you could start hearing the hyenas and you could hear them getting closer to the truck. I mean, to the point where it felt like the truck was surrounded. And so I remember, I had one of the so Poon was kind of inside the Jeep working the call. I was on top of the Jeep, set up prone, and then I had one of the trackers next to me with the spotlight that he was supposed to hit the spotlight, and then I shoot. Well, I could sit there, like I said, I knew the hyenas were surrounding our Jeep, and I'm waiting for him to turn on the light, and I'm like, "What's he waiting for?" And I look over. Well, he was sleeping. He fell asleep because, he'd been up all day long, before sunrise, getting the hunt ready before, and now he wasn't used to, hunting at night, and so I kinda nudged him, and by the time he turned it on, they all, dispersed, and so I didn't get a chance to get one, but so that's on my bucket list for next time. That would've been pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds like an incredible experience. I could probably listen to hear your stories all night.
Yeah. You'll have to have me on again.
So much for recording for an hour, huh?
Yeah.
We'll uh we'll we'll hit this last segment. So if you're listening for the first time, so we finish with rapid fire questions, same questions every time, kind of get some different perspective and see what Samir has to say. Okay, man, you ready?
Yes.
Best hunting gear purchase you've made.
Hands down, I bought it before I went to Mozambique. It was, Primo's trigger sticks because, in Africa, they have their own every shot you take has to be on shooting sticks. It's non-negotiable, but the shooting sticks that they use over there, they're kinda like these wooden sticks that it takes some getting used to, and so rather than risk, taking an uneasy shot over there, I wanted something I was comfortable with, and, by far, that was the best piece of gear that I bought and took over there.
Why is it non-negotiable?
It's just because every shot you take, you're standing, because everything's so tall that, you can't take a kneeling shot or things like that. But also when you're dealing with dangerous game like I was, they don't want you shooting off freehand unless it's like a follow-up shot.
They make you use them.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. What's the worst or most gimmicky hunting purchase you've ever made?
Um, Probably I found this thing on the internet once, I don't remember the company, but it was like this stupid, little, like, personal neck fan that I thought would be cool to wear, like, dove hunting when, I'm out there in 90, 100-degree weather, and, it was loud, and it definitely didn't cool me off enough. Yeah, I think I threw it out after one time.
Probably looks cool.
It didn't actually.
Yeah, that was sarcasm.
It looked cool, and I thought it was gonna cool me down, but it didn't.
Hunting, luck versus skill, percentage breakdown.
For me personally,
Yeah, what do you think it is? Percent luck versus skill.
um, I would say at this point in my life, it's probably 90% skill, 10% luck. I think when I was younger, it was definitely more luck than skill.
Most controversial hunting hot take. Something that you're set on and that people might not agree with.
I mean, I think with hunting in Africa, like mentioned earlier, just with people were up in arms about that Cecil the lion, and I think it's just they're uninformed and they don't understand the science and the good that comes out of that, and I don't think we as Americans are in any place to tell another country, how they should be managing and conserving their wildlife. And like I said, when I went over there, they have it. I was very impressed with how they have their quotas and everything, down here, which over there, which I've hunted some different stuff. I've hunted almost half the states here, and some of them have the most ridiculous laws that obviously people that had never hunted in their life came up with these laws.
100%. Most underrated hunting tactic.
Uh, I'm a big fan. I've only done it once, but, it's called fanning, where when you're turkey hunting, you're kind of, belly crawling behind a the fan of either a real or a plastic, turkey, and when the toms see that, they just get angry and just come charging towards that, but it's very cool. It's not legal in every state, but like I said, I did it once in Pennsylvania with a buddy of mine, Doug Fife. It was a good experience.
Yeah, around here they call it reaping, turkey reaping.
Yes, I've heard that too. Yeah.
One more you might have missed. What's your definition of a hunter versus a killer? If you were to define both of them, how do they differ?
I mean, I think a killer's just out there, that they don't respect the animals, that they're just out there, they kind of get off on pulling the trigger. And, a lot of times, and again, it's to each his own. But, when you see in these hunting shows, guys that are, just not being very respectful to the animal after the kill. Whereas, me personally, as a hunter, like I try to honor the animal. I try to use it, as much of the animal as I can, whether not only but eating, but use the hides for something. I mean, I've gotten to the point now where whenever I get a turkey, I donate the feathers to a Native American tribe, the Zuni tribe in New Mexico, because they use all the feathers for headdresses, and um, even donated all the pheasant tail feathers that I'd accumulated over the years to another Native American tribe that they use those, things like that. And so yeah, I just think the hunter, he appreciates nature and what it provides and honors the animal. And killer just doesn't do those things. I mean, I hate killing. The killing, I hate the killing part. I hate taking a life. For me, it's more the eating than the killing. That I do it for.
Yep. All right, man. I appreciate you answering those. Now you get to expose yourself with some embarrassing stories.
There's a couple, one I remember when I was a kid, when I was probably about 11 and I was squirrel hunting on my family's property. I was having the best squirrel hunt of my life. I think it was the one and only time I got a limit of 6. But I remember towards the end of the hunt, when I went to put, I think, that 6th and final squirrel in my back pouch, one of the squirrels that I'd taken earlier wasn't dead. And he chomped down on my thumb, and it was an incredible amount of pain. And I remember pulling my hand out of my vest and just looking at this squirrel, and blood is spewing out of my thumb. And I'm pretty sure my thumbnail didn't stop properly growing ever since then. But I just remember trying to shake it off, and it wasn't coming off. And so that was kind of, I mean, I respect him for, fighting till the end, and seeking his revenge on me, because it's something I see every day when I look at my deformed thumbnail.
Man, that if you don't think about it, you probably don't think they have sharp teeth, but they can chew through an antler pretty quick.
But yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think where he chomped down on my thumb, I think it hit a nerve or something, because it was, like I said, it was very excruciating pain. And I stopped hunting squirrels after that day, because one, I got a limit, and I just remember it being a lot of work to field dress them for a small amount of meat. And so I just kind of determined it wasn't worth it. And then, like I said, I think him biting the hell out of my thumb kind of left a bad taste in my mouth on squirrel hunting.
Yeah, that's crazy. What else you got?
Well, when I went to Alaska, and was grizzly bear hunting. And I remember, one morning when I was, relieving myself, I remember about a 400-pound black bear, uh, started walking towards me, um, got to probably, and I remember just thinking, if he gets within 40 yards, I'm probably gonna have to use my grizzly tag on him. So I'm sitting there squatting, with a 416 across my lap, hoping he didn't come within 40 yards. The other part in the back of my mind is I'm thinking, all right, if he starts charging, am I gonna take the time to pull my pants up, or am I just gonna shoot him with my pants down? And, fortunately, he stayed at, I think he stayed about 50 yards, and turned around and walked away, so I didn't have to make that call. But, point of the moral of the story is you never wanna get caught with your pants down when there's a 400-pound bear in front of you.
Talk about being vulnerable. You're out there
Yeah.
being vulnerable, and this bear's trying to ruin your
Uh,
moment.
yeah.
Not only that, he's trying to ruin your moment and ruin your hunt by using up your grizzly tag too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You got some pretty good stories, man. I appreciate you joining.
Oh, yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. It's been great.